I'm going to call David, I'm going to call Donna is not a plan.
Mm-mm.
I understand and I appreciate your confidence in our abilities.
My response is going to be, what's in your instant response plan?
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax. HIPAA help is on the way.
Welcome to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. My name is David Sims of HIPAA for MSPs. And joining me is Donna Grindle of Carden, still slightly under the weather.
I know. And I'm getting mad. Well, I've been mad. I don't like not being able to just do things.
Have you hit the COVID fog yet?
Oh, clearly I'm there. I
remember having it. It's like you're walking through the house and you just stop and you're staring at the wall. Like it's not like I forgot where I was going. It's more like I forgot I was even standing up.
When did I get up? When did I walk into this? How long have I been standing here staring at the wall?
Yep. It's tough to have to work through that.
I just sleep. I just do something, sleep. That's it.
Yeah, it's like you go to the bathroom.
Up on anything else?
You go to the bathroom. You're like, oh, that was exhausting.
I can't say that when I was, in the peak, like the first couple of days. At one point, I don't know. I woke up when I almost fell off the toilet. That woke me up, and I'm like, when did I get here? How long have I been here?
You're not going to fool me. That's not the first time you've asked yourself how you got to a toilet.
Nah, that's probably not true, but, I at least had a good, fun story to tell that got me there.
Yeah. All right. Well, today we're going to be talking about the cyber resiliency landscape. Sounds fancy, don't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the cyber resiliency landscape analysis, and I'm like, you can tell technical people are doing these things.
I just picture this yard with nice grass and beautiful cyber resiliency landscape.
Yeah, wasn't it like Windows 95's original screen desktop had like a rolling lawn on it or something? Maybe that's it.
I think that was XP.
Yeah, it's one of I don't know. We're old.
Yeah, 95 and 98 both just had the Windows logo. XP had the rolling hills.
Yeah. Okay, I knew it was a long time ago.
That's why nobody wanted to move away from XP. It was just so pretty. I remember taking other operating systems and making them function like XP and, had the same rolling hills landscape on it and stuff.
The things that you can distract yourself with.
Yeah, not hard to do.
So let's distract ourselves with what we're supposed to talk about today.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's get into it. Before we do, we want to thank all those people who help support the podcast. We appreciate it. And be sure to help others find it by sharing it out. We appreciate it. All right. Let's get into our HIPAA
Did you
Say
say
What
we
segment.
Appreciate it?
I did say that. You didn't hear that part? This is going to be a long podcast.
I did hear it. You said it a few times. I was just pointing out that I noticed.
We appreciate it that you noticed.
Okay, we have no idea where this one's going to go, but I do have notes at least. So,
all right, in our HIPAA Say What segment, let's talk about the fact that those of you who may be doing counseling services and you have psychotherapy notes, you can't hold on to everything. You do have to let people know something if they're asking for their records.
well, and that's the thing is we've run into many cases where those involved in some level of psychotherapy, mental health counselors, that kind of stuff, where they all are like, well, we don't have to give them our records. No, that's not it. You don't have to give them your handwritten notes, the notes you take during sessions, but you got to give them everything else. I mean, come on.
So let's have some proof of that, Donna.
Well, here's some proof. $15,000 check and a 2-year corrective action plan for David Minty, who is a licensed counselor providing psychotherapy services in Pittsburgh, PA. Yeah, all exciting. But it just was announced today, and there's some weirdness in this one, but they just announced a settlement with OCR, another right of access case. So the 44th settlement that's been announced, the 44th action they've announced. Clearly, there's some other things happening that we don't know about yet. This only makes that clear. But it's the whole thing of, I don't have to give you records, kind of apparently, but a father asked for his son's records and they wouldn't give it to him. And the father filed a complaint, and OCR called him up and said, hey, you're supposed to give him the records. Here's what the law says. And then, being like anybody that reads the law, as soon as they read the sentence that they wanted to read, they stopped reading the law. And, who needs to read the law in context? But they didn't give the father the records, who then filed another complaint, which then prompted an investigation, which so on and so forth, blah, 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 blah. We've heard it before. Finally, this agreement was signed, $15,000. Not something you can just stroke a check over, most people. Not a single practitioner, usually something they've budgeted for. So probably got some insurance paying for something. But the thing is, the 2-year, everything looks on the up and up. But here we are. This came out May 8th. Okay? I think that was the official announcement date. But when you look at the documents themselves, Minty signed the agreement on the resolution agreement on 12/29/2022. And then OCR countersigned it on 1/5/2023. So, in theory, everything in the cap should have been, that initial phase should have already been met. So, I don't know. I mean, I can only guess that they're holding out to make sure these things are met before they announce them. Because if they're not met and they got to go back, I don't know. So, yet again, it's another case. And the fact that this thing that was signed in December, January, whatever day you want to count it official, included make sure you give the father the records. So this goes back to like 2017, I want to say. And here we are in 2023 making sure the records actually got to where they needed to be.
Wow.
Because they were forced to do it.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
It's a mess. It continues to be a mess. And, it's a frequently asked question on, a lot of the social media thing is, do I have to pay my bill before I can get my records? No. Do I have to this? No. Can they charge me hundreds of dollars? No. There's a lot of things that fact-specific determinations shouldn't even have to be that detailed when it comes to this. Just give people the records. That's what it's all about. And information blocking is coming to make sure that happens. Everything's making it happen. Just give it to them.
I've got somebody that I know recently that said that they went and requested their medical records for some reason. I don't even know what the reason is, but they were told that their medical records have been lost and they don't have anything.
Huh.
I'm like, okay.
Somebody covering up a ransomware attack with deletion?
Maybe. But the response was, we can't find your records. We don't have anything to give you.
File a complaint.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, your job is to make sure you protect confidentiality, integrity, and availability of those records. And you retain them for a period of at least 6 years, but most of the states are like 10 years. So I'm not saying, I'm just saying.
Yep. Sound like a case.
Anyhow, yeah, I've had to give people, here's where you go to file it, but make sure you include all of this stuff. And, don't wander off into all these other areas just because you're mad.
Yeah. Well, if I know this person, they're going to say, was it going to give me my records back? And I'm going to say, no. Well, then what am I wasting my time for?
Well, it actually might get your records back because there are cases. In fact, there's one big case where they claimed a record didn't exist anymore and went to OCR, and then magically the records were found. Because nobody went and did, extra footwork.
Gotcha.
Kind of thing.
Gotcha.
They were in another system and nobody wanted to get them out of the old system.
Oh, yeah. Go hook up the DOS-based server that's in the basement. And so
yeah. There's a lot of reasons that they really do exist and you're being told they don't. I would definitely file a complaint because you don't have to do anything else. Either you're going to get your records or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
But if you file the complaint, somebody's going to look into it. So that's just one woman's opinion.
Cool. Interesting.
And we know about that, don't we?
All right. Let's dive into the cyber resiliency landscape. It's pretty interesting stuff in this report.
Well, yeah, this came out. This was released with Hiccup. And it, simultaneously, because it references a ton of stuff with Hiccup. And it's quite interesting to read. Mm-hmm. I know. Everybody's like, I believe it is interesting. If you find this stuff remotely interesting, then there will be sections you may skip. But for the most part, the information in here and the recommendations really well thought out and evaluated and studied. Not just, hey, we think you should do this. We don't know why we think it. I actually like when we worry about statistics and proven methods and not just making stuff up because it sounds good.
Well, most people, though, they're going to I'll just wait for it to come out on the podcast and I'll have to read it.
Well, this report, we're not going to give you that kind of luxury. We're going to lead you to the water. After that, you must drink. So this is official title. Hospital Cyber Resiliency Initiative Landscape Analysis. So,
the H. Krilla.
Oh, no. Oh, who knows where we're going to go with that. But, so there's some great information in here. There's some case studies. There's a review of the steps of an intrusion. I mean, there's so many good things in here. We've plucked out the highlights from the intro and pointing out the things that you really need to go look into and read more about and why we think you should. So you want to start with the whole why this thing was done was in the cover letter by the Deputy Secretary Andrea Palm, the DepSec, as they say, of HHS, explained why they asked, what they were looking for, and who they asked for it. So you're going to have to read it there.
All right. So it says, in anticipation of forthcoming policy discussions, we felt that it was necessary to better understand the current state of sector cybersecurity. As a starting point, HHS partnered with the Health Sector Coordinating Council, HSCC, to conduct a landscape analysis of a common attack point for cyber criminals. United States hospitals. Yes, that's what it is. Mm-hmm. In light of the acuity of the patient population, cyber attacks at hospitals can be particularly consequential to patient safety. I wonder who's been saying that for a while. Through this landscape analysis, we sought to better identify the biggest threats facing hospitals and assess their cybersecurity capabilities relative to commonly accepted cybersecurity practices. End
So
quote.
basically, we know we're going to have to do some stuff because this is bad. We want to know how bad is it so that we can figure out, are we doing the things, the basic, commonly accepted cybersecurity practices?
Mm-hmm.
Is it that we're not doing those and that's why we're getting hit so hard? Or are we doing those? And so that's what they were looking for. That's what we were trying to figure out. And they went and picked I don't know why, but, you know, the HHS 405D program seemed like a great place to get that information. And yes, it was. So, you know, yay team. I just did a review on this, but they did a whole lot of studying. They studied it, David.
Mm-hmm.
They used 2 major surveys, data from vendors like Verizon and some other ones,
Mm-hmm.
30 joint reports, and then interviewed people at the hospitals.
Nice.
You know, and all these different kinds. So they address small hospitals, medium ones, and large health system hospitals. They looked at all the geographic, rural, urban, all of the stuff. So geographically diverse and demographically diverse as much as they could. They do believe that they need more input, you know, as always, from the smaller entities.
Mm-hmm.
But the big picture, they hit it pretty well. And then they finished the report with the specific recommendations within Hiccup and how is the industry doing. So that's really cool. But the first quote that was in there on the pull quotes, you know, little boxes, we both were like, boy, first thing I saw was this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Tell them what that one is.
Yeah. So the first finding was that the FBI and DOJ are now treating the patient and public safety risks that cyber attacks are posing on hospitals as a quote unquote threat to life crime. Now, that opens up a lot of avenues for how you address this thing.
So explain the threat to life crimes as a law enforcement, whether they know it or not. You used to be in law enforcement, so.
Yeah. So, I mean, just from my days in law enforcement, when you're talking about something that is a threat to life crime, then, you know, it's kind of common knowledge that as a law enforcement officer, you can neutralize the threat if it is going to cause serious bodily harm or death to an individual, which means threat to life.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, not saying anybody would do it, but it does open up the potential for somebody kicking the door in and saying, get your hands off the keyboard before I put a bullet in you.
Uh-huh. That would be, yeah. So it really means they can get a whole lot tougher.
Yes.
So for them to think, oh, well, it's, you know, harmless white collar crime. No, it's not.
Yeah.
It is a true threat to life.
Right. So, I mean, it's up there now with the same things as, you know, I'm threatening you with serious bodily harm with any kind of weapon. So it's basically saying, look, this is a weaponized assault on somebody, on their life.
Mm-hmm. So it is literally saying someone's life is in real and immediate danger.
Yep.
So you need to act. And that better get some people paying attention.
Mm-hmm. I guess that makes IT folks life preservers.
Yuck, 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 yuck. Another quote that I thought was interesting, 96% of hospitals claim they were operating with end-of-life operating systems or software with known vulnerabilities, which is inclusive of medical devices.
96%.
Yep.
I mean, I wonder if the other 4% wasn't fudging. I mean, golly. I mean, that's nearly 100%. That's crazy.
Well, and the fact that they know they're doing it. Now, I would be curious if you took the medical devices out, because I think a lot of it is the medical devices
Yeah.
in
Could be.
healthcare. Because things change. If you don't have medical devices, everything gets easier.
Mm-hmm.
But then that doesn't mean you can't let IoT run rampant either. So,
Yeah. I mean, it's not just a hospital problem.
no.
Keep end of life operating systems. We're going through something right now with luckily not healthcare, but they're running tons of end of life operating systems, but it's not their PCs. It's their pads. They're not iPads or Android things. I mean, they're 2 years behind on patching. And it's just a matter of just applying the patching.
Yeah.
But it's like, I mean, this is a multinational client, not a small client. They are international, and they got these Android pads everywhere, and they're all out of date. So it's a problem. Doing patching is an issue.
Yeah. And it doesn't seem to improve.
Mm-mm.
And I'm just, particularly on mobile devices.
Yep. It's just harder to do than you would expect. Not impossible to do, just hard to do. So.
Well, what's interesting is that when you start looking at somebody's device, right? It happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Will you look at mine?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You gonna buy me another drink? I'll do it. And you look at it and you're like, you haven't closed any apps in forever. Well, I reboot it, but all the apps came back up, haven't closed apps, and you haven't deleted any text messages, and you haven't loaded any patches.
Yeah.
No, your phone's not going to work. Your device is going to give you trouble, period.
Mm-hmm.
So just do those 3 things, please.
I'm doing an assessment right now where one of the answers coming from one of the end users was, I apply updates whenever I get a notification that pops up. And so the further question was, well, what do you do to make sure that all patching is being done?
Yeah.
And the same answer was, I apply whatever things pop up on the machine.
If it doesn't tell me to do it, I'm not doing it.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know what it's asking me to do. I'm just doing it. Yeah, there's no actual policy or process around it. It's just, when it asks me to do it, I do it. I mean, I have seen multiple cases where computers can be months or years out of date and the pop-up never happened, or somebody clicked off of it and it never came back. I'm busy right now. I can't do the reboot. Okay.
Blow right by it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's even on security system. After we were gone, we get back and all these things on the security system needed updating, and it's like you have to update this before you can update that.
Yeah,
and then you update this, then you can update that, and you have
cascading updates.
Yeah. So for the most part, we know vulnerable devices, they're gonna be everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
That's clear with 96%.
Yeah.
But I did like this other little, attacks are faster, smarter, and more organized.
Yep.
I think we talked about these, but the 3 points they make, hit them, boss.
Number 1, the elapsed time to exploit is decreasing. So, yeah, they are faster. The expansion of phishing as a service. So, yes, they are smarter. And increased in access broker services. They are more organized.
There you go. It hits it all.
Yep.
But for the most part, everybody just doesn't even get that. They think it's the same as it's always been. It is not, David. No. It is not.
Mm-mm. No, we talk about that often. If you're still doing the same things you were doing even a year ago, you're way behind.
Yeah. And panic sets in with me on a pretty regular basis. I don't know about you.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I love the folks that's like, oh yeah, we looked at that a couple of years ago. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's 2 lifetimes.
Yeah, I was really proud when one of my friends who I work with on a regular basis were talking about, I never once change. I don't want to change what I'm using because I know how to use it. I don't have time, all the same stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Who said to me, I said, here are all the things you're up against. In order for me to do what you want, these are your options. And literally said, maybe it's time I go back and reevaluate. I haven't looked into these other alternatives in years. Do you think they've changed? A good bit. Good bit.
Mm-hmm.
So off you go now. Go learn about these alternatives so that I don't have to do more research on the thing you shouldn't be doing. There you go. All right. So the overall observations, as we say, the overall observations, they hit 10 points. And it is very not shocking,
Mm-hmm.
and informative. Directly targeted ransomware attacks aimed to disrupt clinical operations are an outsized and growing cyber threat to hospitals. Yeah,
Yes.
we kind of know that. Variable adoption of critical security features and processes, coupled with a continually evolving threat landscape, can expose hospitals to more cyber attacks. Like, yes, we all use multi-factor authentication, but when you ask deeper questions, they only use it on one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And only certain emails and those kind of things. Vulnerability assessments. Well, whenever it pops up and tells us to do it, we're doing it, but we're not testing to see, and we're not scanning it, and we're not,
Yeah.
we're just, doing something.
The mistakes I see on vulnerability assessments is they'll do something like, for example, it'll be, we're going to do a quarterly vulnerability assessment. So as we know, these are snapshots in time. So you're basically taking one snapshot every 3 months, and then you're basing everything off that. And this is why they're now pushing for vulnerability management programs. So you should be looking at vulnerabilities constantly, not a snapshot in time. So these assessments, although better than nothing, there's so much that can happen between, one day to the next. And you have no idea unless you have that stuff running all the time.
Even for ours, I have ours where it goes out and I have a list of third parties and all of this. And it still is like, okay, you still have these that I can't do for you. You're going to need to go do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but those are running every week, not quarterly, but anyway. We should do more testing is what it said. We should be working better with the vulnerabilities. Training and outreach. For the most part, everybody said that they see that as the most effective way to build resiliency is to have training and get people involved, which is what I think we may have mentioned.
Yeah, only
once or a million times.
407 to be exact.
At least once. And then this hospital at home, because they know this is really, remote patient monitoring is where a lot of things are going, and nobody's really thinking a lot of that through. So they know that just continues to expand the threat surface. So anyhow, good news, hospitals report measurable success in implementing email protections, which is a key attack vector.
Absolutely. We've talked about this too. Like if you have only the money to either protect your endpoints or your email, that's a tough one to have to choose between, but I'm almost willing to put my money on protecting the email.
Yeah. So many things start from there. But unfortunately, that was item number 3. The hospitals have made improvements. But item number 4 is supply chain risk is pervasive, meaning That doesn't mean all of your partners have made the same email corrections.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you improve in the hospital, you have to worry about improving the entire supply chain. The good news is medical devices have not typically been exploited to disrupt clinical operations. It doesn't say the word yet.
Yeah.
We know how.
Well, they did say not typically. Not
Mhm.
at all.
Yeah. So that's good, meaning it's not happening as that is today. However, they have so many other ways in, they haven't started using those.
Mm-hmm.
Is really, plus those are a little harder to learn about. You know, your operating systems that are out there, they would have to know about these individual devices. Now, that's not to say they're not learning about them. We know this. And the more you shut down other abilities, the more they'll migrate towards those other vulnerabilities that they know are there. There is a significant variation in cybersecurity resiliency among hospitals. And I would say across the board, it's significant in healthcare. It's significant in every industry, really, between different organizations. And all it takes is one leader who's been the driving force to make sure you're resilient. They leave and go somewhere else and bring in somebody that's like, well, we shouldn't spend money on this. And now, you know, you go backwards, which is why we say you have to review annually where even your business partners are. And I read this one and I'm like, yeah, this is one of those ones when people first come into healthcare and you're like, you're going to need to learn about some stuff that happens in healthcare that doesn't necessarily happen everywhere else. The use of antiquated hardware, systems, and software by hospitals is concerning.
Yeah.
You know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it is what got us in this mess.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean? We just bought these computers 7 years ago. I actually had somebody say that to me one time. They're not that old. We just bought them like 7 years ago.
Did you get a new car? How old is your car?
I know.
I just want to know before we talk about this. How old is your car?
That's one of those times when you're like waiting on them to start laughing because you're like sure that they're joking.
Yeah, you're pausing with a smile on your face, like
yeah, like that was a good one. They're not laughing.
They don't understand why you're smiling.
That's typical anyway.
I know, right? All right, number 8 on their observations that they noted. Cybersecurity insurance premiums continue to rise.
Mm-hmm.
We know this. We've discussed it repeatedly. I still got to get John back on here. I just haven't made it a priority to get it on his schedule. 9, securing cyber talent with requisite skills and experience is challenging.
Yep.
You know that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough world. But number 10, adopting Hiccup improves cyber resiliency. And it was interesting, the mapping and the studies that they did to cross-reference the things in Hiccup in place versus so I was thrilled to see that they were able to map that out. So those are the overall, and there is a lot of detail that they discuss on each of these observations.
Mm-hmm.
But then they break down the Hiccup 10 practices into 4 categories. And to me, this made it pretty straightforward on anybody asking for where their priorities should be. This list works great.
Yeah, I like it.
You know? No action required. There's significant progress made. Meaning, don't stop what we're doing, but we have made significant progress here. We're not worried about making sure this gets done. One thing, email. Of the 10 practices, one thing.
Mhm.
And then there's one thing that's listed under further attention required. It's just not urgent, which is data protection and loss prevention. Not urgent. Needs to be done. Everything else falls into two categories: urgent improvement needed or additional research required to determine where it's needed and what's needed. So let's focus on the urgent improvement needed, David.
Okay.
They seem pretty straightforward and not
Yeah.
shocking at all.
Nope.
How many things did you just talk about? Endpoint protection.
Mm-hmm.
It's boom, right there. Endpoint protection systems. That's every device that's accessing the network, and is it protected? And getting into zero trust and getting into defense in depth and all of those different pieces and parts. You have to have layered security is what we've talked about before, which is the same as defense in depth. But when you talk about endpoint protection, it doesn't mean I've got an antivirus.
Yeah. The other piece of it I see missing sometimes is they'll have the right software, but if they did the fire and forget method, set it and forget it. So they don't have it actually being monitored. They don't have it actually being managed. They don't have anybody actually looking at any alerts. They just stick it on there and, kind of configure it to block some stuff and all that. And then, okay, we'll come back and reassess it again later.
Yeah. In the meantime, it's been telling you you're under attack and that you've been, and we can't stop this and we're seeing this. It's telling you. Nobody's paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
The other areas that urgent improvement needed: identity and access management.
Oh, yes.
No. That computer uses password 1. That one uses password 2.
We all use Susie's password.
It's a pretty good one.
Yeah, that reminds me of that assessment I'm doing right now for that company. It's funny how actually people are being quite truthful in their responses to the assessment. But it's, when it comes to things like the access management, it's everything from, we all use the same username and passwords to one person said, I remember all my passwords in my head because it's only a couple. It's
I keep all my passwords in my purse.
Yeah, I've had one person said they had a notebook for them. One or two people use some type of password manager, but for the most part, they don't use anything, and they use the same password everywhere. Just what you would imagine. Nothing shocking.
And ironically, to many people, this is shocking. And I'm like, not in our world. Nay, nay. Not in our world.
No, the only thing shocking me is they're being honest about it.
You're not having to ask 40 questions to get there. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. All right. So the next thing is network management. Yes. That kind of ties in with endpoint protections as well as identity access, but things like segmentation.
Yeah.
That you can't live in the old giant flat network world anymore.
Mm-mm.
That's just no. And allow all traffic through your connections. No. I mean,
or better yet, if you turn something off, turn it back on. Or if you got another vendor coming in to put a piece of equipment in, make sure it's set up properly. Even if you gave them the documentation on how to set it up properly, make sure it's set up properly.
Yeah, and when you dispose of things, and there's a long list of things that needs to be taken care of when you're managing the network and onboarding and offboarding, disposal and moving things and changing. I got this, I always am a proponent of you buy really good equipment, you put that on the power users' desks, and you take what they're using and you move it downstream, getting rid of what the less power users, the ones that just need to do 2 or 3 things. Okay, their device needs to be the 2-year-old device or the 3-year-old device. For me, the 7-year-old device. Not the main people. The main people should be getting, now, if you're not really doing anything but browsing the web, that doesn't make you a main person. That just makes you somebody that just browses the web. I'm just saying. But people who are power users, where we've got tons of apps and multiple tabs and multiple screens and whole different ballgame.
Mm-hmm.
Vulnerability management, I think we have discussed that extensively.
Mm-hmm. And we will continue for a while.
Yes. And then Security Operations Center, or SOC, and incident response. We know, and that's another one that we talk about constantly. Incident response plans. If you don't have one, I'm going to call David, I'm going to call Donna, is not a plan.
Mm-mm.
I understand and I appreciate your confidence in our abilities.
My response is going to be, what's in your incident response plan?
Yeah, I got a call when I was out of town, and somebody that, hey, we've got all this cybersecurity nailed down. Great. I'm sure you really don't know what you don't know, but I'll let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, one of their vendors has a problem, and now it's like, wait a minute, I didn't know all this other stuff. Yeah, now you know why I exist.
Yep.
But it gets into incident response and making the decisions and dealing with the situation, both upstream and downstream when you're a BA.
Yeah.
Covered entities deal with patients yelling at them.
Yeah. Well, this report, though, is definitely worth taking it and looking at it further. Even if you just grab it and kind of look down the pages and just grab some of the headings off of it and look at the pretty pictures, you still get a lot of information out of it. Just the graphs themselves tell a story. So they're very good to look at and get that information. But we're constantly talking about how to know what you need to work on, where you need to put your investment of time and money. And these reports tell you that.
Well, yeah, and there's a section on that I really like where it talked about the threat and what the impact of the threat is and what you could do to mitigate that.
Yep.
So, for example, third-party breach, it just seemed like a good point to hit now. An incident in which the third party is compromised and can be used as an access or attack vector to launch further attacks. Hospitals can be attacked through this conduit depending on access afforded to suppliers, or they might be serving up mission-critical services to clinical operations that are the source of an attack. And so that's your impact. And then over here, implement a third-party risk assessment and management program focusing on evaluating risk to patient safety and connectivity. Stipulate contractual protections for mission-critical suppliers and ensure risk are mitigated through internal controls and remediated with suppliers. So, I mean, right there, it takes this one thing and gives you very specific information about it.
Yeah. I mean, they practically do most of your risk assessment for you.
Right. I mean, it covers everything like credential harvesting and destruction of backups, those kind of things, but it goes through all of those, and then it starts going through understanding the staffing and exactly how they divided all of the different hospitals they looked at so that you could really see, and comparing NIST implementation as well as hiccup coverage. And I personally, when they went through each of those, and they would also map it to the CISA Common Performance Goals, which is a whole nother framework thing that we have to deal with. But they evaluate the risk of each area and then make, here's our overview and here's our assessment of the risk. And this is what we think we need to be doing. So I thought it was awesome when you go through those risk assessments and it explains, very specifically, here is 91% of this, 52.6 of this, blah. It's done with stats and numbers and real world examples.
Mm-hmm.
And you end up with very specific details on the evaluation. So highly recommend it. That whole section. Take the time, review the charts, the graphs, the risk assessment, everything about it. It's very informative.
And we will have a link to it in the show notes.
Yeah, we will. And you can also find it on the 405D website at
hhs.405d.gov.
No. You done blew it again.
I was looking at your face whenever I said it. I couldn't stop because I already saw your face going, No, it is definitely not there. So it's 405d.hhs.gov. Say it again for you folks. 405d.hhs.gov.
Very much so.
All right. That is our show for today, folks. Thanks for listening. Be sure to share us out. Share me. Don't share Donna yet. She don't feel very good. She might want to social distance some more.
Yeah, I continue.
All right. We'll catch you again next week. And remember, for Donna and myself, that HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.